Rabotai, welcome back to another class on Gemara Journey with Rashi. We are continuing in Masecht Berachot Daf Bet, amud Bet. This will be part 9 of the Shi'ur. We're going to continue from where we left off yesterday. The last thing we had mentioned yesterday, we were saying that Oni Shi'ur L'chud v'Kohen Shi'ur L'chud. That the Oni's time is different and the Kohen's time is different. The Gemara says, no. Oni v'Kohen chad shu'urhu. The Oni and the Kohen, it's one and the same time. V'Oni u'bnei Adam lav chad shu'urhu. However, the Oni and the people that would eat their bread meal on Friday night, their times are not identical. So the Gemara says, one second, V'Oni v'Kohen chad shu'urhu. Do you want to tell me that an Oni and the Kohen, it's one at the same time? What do you mean? I will bring you a contradiction. Now we're going to see 5 different opinions. After we're going to see 5 different opinions, then we're going to actually ask the question on how Oni v'Kohen cannot be the same time. Right, over here. So the Gemara says like this. Oni v'Kohen chashuru. No, it's not true. Oni v'Kohen is one at the same time. But an Oni and the people that eat their bread meal on Friday night, they're not one at the same time. So the Gemara asks a question, one second. Do you want to tell me that the poor people and when the Kohen, they're one at the same time? What do you mean? I'll bring you a contradiction. From when does one begin to recite Shema? In the evening. From the time when the day sanctifies on Erev Shabbat, meaning when it becomes Shabbat, on Erev Shabbat, from then you are allowed to go ahead and recite the Kriya Shema. In the evening, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. This is the first opinion. Right? Rabbi Eliezer, Shkadesh Hayom Be'erev Shabbat. That he holds, when does one begin to recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? Once Shabbat kicks in. If we look into Rashi, in Dibra Malchil Mish'ash Kadesh Hayom B'arvei Shabbatot, when is that time when Shabbat kicks in? Ha'inu ben Hashmashot, that's at twilight, meaning after sunset. Because what is twilight? Safik Yom Safik Laila. It's a doubt to us if the twilight period, is it a day or is it night? Since it's a doubt if it's a day or night, we're going to tell you that the Shabbat kicked in, that the day sanctified from a doubtful situation. Since Shabbat is from the Torah, and I don't know if twilight, is it day or is it night, we're going to be stringent and we're going to look at it as night, and we're going to tell you that Shabbat actually started. So therefore, at that time, you are already allowed to go ahead and say Kriya Shema. That is the first opinion. Continues the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shua says, Misha'asha Kohanim mittoharin le'echol bitrumatan. From the time of the Kohanim, they become tahor to eating their truma. That is the second opinion. Rabbi Shua says, mittoharin. We're dealing with the Kohanim. One more time. Rabbi Shua holds that from when they become tahor to be able to eat the truma, that is the time that you are allowed to go ahead and begin the reciting of the Shema in the evening. Rabbi Meir says, Misha'asha Kohanim tovlin le'echol bitrumatan. Now Rabbi Meir is going to give us a little bit of a difficulty, because the language that Rabbi Meir uses, it doesn't say when the Kohanim become tahor to be allowed to eat the truma. He says when the Kohanim enter into the mikvah to dip, that time you're allowed to go ahead and say the Shema. And that's going to be a problem, because we know, when do the Kohanim go into the mikvah? That's before sunset. So how do you allow a person to go ahead and say Kriya Shema before sunset? So if we look into the Gemara language one more time, Rabbi Meir says, Misha'asha Kohanim tovlin le'echol bitrumatan. From the time the Kohanim toivel, when they dip into the mikvah, to be able to eat the truma, that is the time you have to go ahead and recite the Shema. If you look into Rashi says, Mish'asha Kohanim tovlin. When is that? the Kohanim, they go into the mikvah before twilight. Why do we want them to go into the mikvah before twilight? So Rashi is telling you, because we want that on the Kohanim, it should be on them sunset before Ben Hashmashot. And this is what is brought down in Bameh Madlikin on page 35, side 1, on Daf 35, side 1. The time when the Kohanim have to enter to eat, at the time when the Kohanim have to enter to dip into the mikvah, that's a little bit before the twilight period. So one more time, Rabotai. Misha'asha Kohanim tovlin. I'm still in Rashi. From the time when the Kohanim enter to dip into the mikvah, that is the time you have to go ahead and recite the Shema. So Rashi says, which is that time? Ha'inu kodem ben hashmashot. That's before twilight. And why do I want the Kohanim to go before twilight? Because I want that it should be on them before the twilight period even kicks in. I want the sunset to basically set in on them. That means Rashi is telling us right now, he wants two things to happen. Like we showed in the Daf Bet Amud Aleph in the beginning. They have to go to the mikvah and then the sun has to set and then they are allowed to eat the truma. We don't want them to actually go to the mikvah after the setting of the sun. No. I want the sun to be able to set on the Kohen when he's pure. So that's why he says, let them go a little bit before Ben Hashmashot. So once they dip and they're tahor, now the sun set, now it's Ben Hashmashot, and when the stars come out, let them go ahead and let them eat. Okay. Continues the Gemara. The Gemara says, amud Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Meir, 1 second, how can you tell me that the time when a person is allowed to recite the Kriya Shema in the evening is when the Kohanim enter to dip into the mikvah to be able to eat the truma? That doesn't make sense. Why? But don't the Kohanim go to the mikvah while it is still day? If he's going before twilight, it's day. So how do you allow a person to go ahead and recite Kriya Shema during the day? If we look into Rashi, but don't the Kohanim go to the mikvah during the day? Rabbi Yehuda is going according to his own reason, meaning Rabbi Yehuda he's asking this question because he holds of Ben Hashmashot to be a certain amount of time, as we'll see. Alright, we'll see this, Rabotai. I'll just tell you like this. Rabbi Meir doesn't hold of what Rabbi Yehuda holds. So he's able to say what he says, as we'll see, B'lineder. So one more time, Rabotai. Rabbi Yehuda went according to his own reasoning of what he holds. That's why he asked Rabbi Meir this question. Because the Amr B'Bameh Madlikin, because Rabbi Yehuda, because he said, yes, in Bameh Madlikin, Ben Hashmashot, the twilight period, Kedem Mahalach Chatzimil Kodem Tzedek Kochavim, it's about the time that it takes a person to walk a half a mil before the stars come out. Karui Ben Hashmashot, it's called the Ben Hashmashot period. Now, V'havi Safik, and that period is considered to be a doubtful period. Now, just before we continue, I just want to elaborate on this Rashi to clarify it a little bit. Rabbi Yehuda says in Bameh Madlikin that, and I'll just tell you something also very important to know. You see over there it says, Ben Hashmashot Kidei Mahalach Chatzimil. If you see over there it says Kidei. Kidei could mean in order, but a lot of times in Halach and Gemara language, depending on the context, a lot of times Kidei will mean the amount of time. Alright, and not in order. It means Kidei means the amount of time that it takes X, Y, and Z to do. So, let's just see that one more time. The Amar B'Bameh Madlikin, Ben Hashmashot, the period of Ben Hashmashot, the period of twilight, Kidei is the amount of time, Mahalach, that it takes a person to walk, Chatzi meal, a half of a meal, and I'll explain what that means. Kodem Tzedek Kochavim, before the stars come out, Karui Ben Hashmashot, that period is called twilight. V'havi Safik, and that whole period is considered to be a doubtful period. So someone wants to see something, 1 second. There's a hay over here, 1 second. Okay. If you look into the Hagot Ritzunim in the Odehei, he says you have to yesh lahagiyah. Yoter mechatzimil. So you got to add those words. You have to add the word yoter mechatzimil. Alright, so Rashi is telling you that the amount that it takes you to walk from twilight until when the stars come out, it has to be more. Rashi's language is it has to be the amount of time that it takes you to walk a half of a meal. However, Hagot Ritzunim is telling you should amend it and you should say more than a half a meal. That means the amount of time that it takes me to walk from twilight, meaning from sunset until when the stars come out, that period is the period that will require me to walk more than a half a meal. Whatever that half a meal is, that's considered to be the Ben Hashmashot period. And that's considered to be a doubtful period. Now, you know something? Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. 1 second. Let's do this. If sunset is here and the stars come out is over here, so what is Rabbi Yehuda telling us? The amount that it takes, and remember, this whole period over here is called twilight. This whole period over here is called twilight. From sunset till when the stars come out. So Rabbi Yehuda is telling you that the amount of time that is going to take you to walk from the sunset period until when the stars come out period is called twilight. And how much is it? So there's two understandings. According to Rashi, the amount that is going to take you to walk a half of a meal. So let's get to that terminology first. Well, how much is it a meal? So a meal literally is less than, it's like around 0.7 miles. It's less than a mile. So a meal, there's different opinions, but we're going to go with one opinion. It takes about to walk, a regular meal takes about to walk 18 minutes. A regular meal, it takes about to walk 18 minutes. So if it takes us to walk a regular meal 18 minutes, but he's telling us, according to Rashi, says how long it's going to take you to walk a half a meal, we're going to divide 18 by 2, it's going to give us 9 minutes. That means, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Ben Hashmashot period is 9 minutes. But according to the Hagot Ritzunim, he wants to tell you, you have to add over there the amount of time that is going to take them to walk a little bit more than a half of a meal. So if that's the case, so you're going to have to just add maybe another minute, maybe another 2 minutes. Let's just put 2 minutes for argument's sake. That means over here, according to the Hagot Ritzunim, it doesn't make a very big difference. As you'll see, it's just, in the world of Rabbi Yehuda, we see over here that twilight period is, according to Hagot Ritzunim, is 11 minutes. Okay? So again, Rabotai, I like to do it like this just to make sure that we have it clear. Now, so if we go back into the Rashi, let's do the Rashi with the Hagot Ritzunim. So he says like this, Rabbi Yehuda went according to his own reason that he asked this question on Rabbi Meir, the Amar, because he said, B'bameh madlikin, in Bameh madlikin, Ben Hashmashot Kedei Mehalach Yoter Mechatzi Mil. The period of Ben Hashmashot, the period of twilight, is the amount of time that it's going to take a person to walk more than a half of a meal. Kodem before the stars come out. Karui Ben Hashmashot. That period is called Ben Hashmashot. V'havi Safik. And that period is considered to be called, excuse me, a doubtful period. Right over here. Hilkach, therefore he says, now Rabbi Yehuda says like this, Hilkach, Tevila de Mikami Hachi, so therefore when he's going ahead and he's going to the mikvah, meaning the Kohen, when he's going into the mikvah, prior to this time, meaning prior to Ben Hashmashot, Mi'ba'od Yomu is still considered to be day. V'lav Zman Shchiva, and it's not a time when people go to sleep. So how in the world did you, Rabbi Meir, say that from when does one recite the Kriya Shema in the evening, from when the Kohanim enter to dip into the mikvah, before they eat their truma, that's the time to recite the Kriya Shema. That can't be. We need the pasuk says, when people lie down. And that's not as much chivu because it's still day. So how does Rabbi Meir say that that time is permissible to be able to say Kriya Shema? Rashi continues and he says, Rashi is later on is going to explain, my ahadar le Rabbi Meir. What did Rabbi Meir reply back to him? What did he answer him? Now, 1 second, just let me see something also. 1 second. Okay, you'll go down. Right. Rabotai, I also want to make a small correction now that I just paid attention to this. Something rang my bell. Yesterday we spoke about in Dibra Matchil in Umikadmi. In the previous class in the Rashi on top, Dibra Matchil Umikadmi. And I spoke about over there and I said that from dawn until sunrise, right? From dawn until sunrise. I told you yesterday that it was 72 minutes. Actually, I gave you what the halacha states. I shouldn't have done that. Take that back, Rabotai. It's very important to go with the Rashi. Dawn and sunrise. So, yes, I told you that we were seeing in Rashi opinion, in the whole business with the Mechashchi Mikadmi, we saw yesterday that we have to say that dawn, it takes the amount of time that it's going to take you to walk 5 mil before sunset. That's when the period of dawn is. That's when the period of dawn starts. So if that's going to be the case, if it's 5 mil and 1 mil takes me to walk 18 minutes, if it tell me 5, I have to walk 5 mil, how much is that going to be? 18 times 5 is going to give me 90. So it's actually going to be 90 minutes. I said 72 yesterday, but I'm just going with the Rashi's opinion, okay? 90 minutes. You might ask me, what is the practical halachic difference over here, Rabbi? 72 minutes, 90 minutes. What got the point? There's a very big difference. Because you have to know, a lot of times when a person, he has to go to work early, and let's say Alot HaShachar, dawn is very late, if you only go 72 minutes, you only give me a certain amount of time. But if you go 18 more minutes back, you can allow the person to start davening a little bit earlier. So it does play a very big role, and I believe there are leniencies for this in time of great need. But let's not do that because this is not a halakha class right now. But in any event, I wanted to also make that correction. So just let's know that in the case Umikadmi, which is Rashi, where he says over there, "Vehem makdimim ma'alot hashach," and they would proceed working from dawn, "Dahavi kimo mehalach chamisha milim," because that's about dawn begins before sunrise, about the amount of time that a person takes to walk, amount of time that it takes a person to walk 5 mil, which is 18 times 5, which will give me 90 minutes. All right, just wanted to get that out of the way. Fine. Baruch Hashem, Rabotai, Baruch Hashem. Okay. One thing about the media, about these recordings, that I can always come back. If I have to fix something, I can fix something. Baruch Hashem, Rabotai. Thank you, Hashem. Okay. All right. So we continue back in the Gemara. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda v'halol kohanim b'od yom hem tovlim. Rabbi Yehuda said 1 second, but don't the kohanim go during the day, and that's not a time of zman shchiva. So how did you, Rabbi Meir, allow them to say Kriya Shema at the time when the kohanim dip into the mikvah? It's still day. Because again, I want to make it clear. Why is it still day? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, in his world, he has another, depending how you want to, according to which opinion, doesn't matter. Let's just stick with the Rashi's opinion. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have another 9 minutes. Excuse me, you have another 9 minutes until when the stars come out. So really he's saying that the period over here is Safik Yom, Safik Laila. So when he's going before this, when you're saying Shema before the time of sunset, let's say, right, watch this, 1 second, let's do this. 1 second, let's do this. Just want to make sure you guys get it. 1 second, let's do this. Rabotai, this is what, when you have like all the Ritzunim and amendments and everything, this is how it is, but it's fine. You want to know Pishat, you want to have a clear understanding. So let's say sunset starts over here. Let's say sunset starts right over here at this point. When the stars come out is at this point. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the reason why he asked the question of Rabbi Meir, because he holds that this whole time over here is really Ben Hashem's twilight period. And since it's a suffix, so he's telling that when you're going before this period of twilight, since over here is still day, So when they're really dipping, yeah, when they dip, right, that's the time you allow me to say Shema. Beautiful. If that's the time you allow me to say Shema, but this whole time is still Safik Yom, Safik Laila. It's a doubt if it's night or if it's day. So I have a very big problem with this. If it's a doubt, if it's night and day, how is he going ahead and saying Shema at this period when they're dipping? Because I still have another 9 minutes to wait, according to the original Pshat of Rashi, before the stars come out. He's not fulfilling the mitzvah of creation because it has to be Ubishabacha at the time when people lie down, when they go to sleep. But nobody goes to sleep at this time. People start going to sleep over here according to Rabbi Yehuda. You guys will see when Rabbi Meir is going to answer, you will understand why I had to do this chart. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Amal Rabbi Yehuda v'halo kohanim b'od yom hem tovlim. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Meir was saying, but don't the kohanim go during the day to the mikvah? They're dipping. At the time when they're dipping, it's still day. Not only that, you have also Ben Hashmashot, twilight after that. So how are you allowing them to recite Shema? That's another opinion. Continue back with our chart. Continue back with our chart. Make sure you can see it. Okay. Now, continue. The Gemara says, Rabbi Chanina says, Rabbi Chanina says right over here, when does one begin to recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? From the time when the poor person enters to eat the bread with salt. Right? This is the opinion of Rabbi Chanina. Right over here. Oni. Pitu v'melech. Rabbi Achai. However, Rabbi Achai says, V'amrila Rabbi Acha. Some say it was Rabbi Achai, and some say it was Rabbi Acha. Omer, he says, Misha'ah sherov b'nei adam nichnitzim lehasev. From the time when majority of the people, they enter to recline. The word recline over here literally means lahasev, to recline, but really which means to go ahead and sit down to have a meal. So why is he using the language of lehasev and not leyoshev? There's a very big difference between the way we eat today and the way they ate back then. Back then they used to recline literally on the floor. They used to have mats and they used to recline. That's what it's called lehasev, to recline. That means they're reclining to having a meal. Today, put it to you like this. Today our sitting is their reclining. Okay, put it to you like that. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Achai, and some say it was really Rabbi Achai that said it. When can one recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? From when the majority of the people start entering to recline to eat their bread meal. Right away, Rabbi Achai. Rov b'nei Adam, okay? Now, so we have over here 5 opinions. Here we go. We're still going to get to the question. Now we're going to ask the question. Remember, when you learn Gemara, the system is that first is going to ask the question. First is going to bring the attack. And then after it brings everything, and a lot of times when it quotes the Gemara, it doesn't just quote that one line which you have to know. It'll bring you the whole teaching, the whole Mishnah, the whole Brayta, whatever it might be that's connected with it. And only then, in later on, is it going to ask the question that's pertaining to the contradiction. So that the Gemara is going to do that right now. So he says like this. V'i amad, here we go, Rabotai. V'i amad, and if you're going to say, Oni v'kohen chad shu'uru, if you're going to tell me that an Oni and the Kohen is really one at the same time, pay close attention, Rabotai. I underlined it, the pink first. Rabbi Chanina hain Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Chanina, that's exactly the same opinion like Rabbi Yehoshua. That's going to come out of here. Because what are you telling me right now? That the Oni when he enters to eat is at Tzedz Kochavim. And the Kohen when he enters to eat is at Tzedz Kochavim. So if you pay close attention, I wrote over Tzedz. That means, according to Rabbi Chanina, when does one recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? When the poor person enters to eat his bread and salt. Which is when? Tzedz Kochavim. According to Rabbi Yehoshua, 1 second. Yes, Rabbi Yehoshua. Okay, yes, Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua learns from the time when the Kohanim become tahor. Once they went to the mikvah, they came out, they became tahor. Now they're allowed to go ahead and eat the truma. That is the time you're allowed to go ahead and say the Kriya Shema. Beautiful, and it's going on the Kohen. So if this case is going on to Kohen, that's the time when you're allowed to recite the Kriya Shema. And what did we just say a second ago? What was our initial assumption that we wanted to formulate the system of saying that Oni v'kohen chad shu'uruhu? Oni v'kohen chad shu'uruhu, if the Oni is Tzedz Kochavim and the Kohen is Tzedz Kochavim, I have a problem. Here we go. If Rabbi Chanina is Tzed, if Rabbi Yehoshua is Tzed, I have a very big problem. Why? Because why do I have them in the same teaching? Remember I told you before, if he is coming here to teach us something, that means he's arguing on the previous rabbis. If he's coming over here, he's arguing with everybody else. But the way we want to make it sound right now with our assumption, saying that only Vikon is at the same time, that means you're making these two opinions. You're making the opinion of Rabbi Chananya, and you make the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, one and the same. But that's a problem. You can't have in the Mishnah two agreeing opinions, or in the Baraita, you can't have it two agreeing opinions. That's why they want to learn from over here that there is no way you can learn that Oni V'Kohen Chad Shuru. It's impossible. You have to go back to our original formulation that Oni Shur L'chud, V'Kohen Shur L'chud. That Oni and Kohen, two separate times. So let's go back into the Gemara. Let's see this inside the Gemara, Rabotai. V'i amart Oni V'Kohen Chad Shuru. If you're going to tell me that an Oni and a Kohen, when their time is one and the same, I have a problem. Rabbi Chanin and Rabbi Yeshua. Comes out that the opinion of Rabbi Chanin is exactly the same as Rabbi Yeshua. So why do I need both of them? Just tell me one of them and I know that's the time. Because they're one and the same. Eilalav, Rabotai, Eilalav, I like to translate it as must be. And I'll tell you, in English it's going to sound Eila rather. Isn't it? Again, Rabotai, in English, a lot of things in English, you want to make sure that it makes sense. In Hebrew, it makes sense one way. In English, when you're saying it, it makes sense a different way. So I picked up this language actually from Eilalav many years ago from Rabbi, I believe his name is Rabbi Garil Mir Elbaz, Rabbi Chaimov's son-in-law. Humongous Talmud Chacham. And I used to listen to the Gemara trying to understand here. If I missed something, I would listen to certain Rebbeim just to try to figure out what was going on. And one of the ways, what I picked up from him was that Eilalav must be, and that's a very nice way of saying it. Okay, instead of going rather, isn't it? If you like to use that language, you can use that language. But when you're explaining this to somebody in English, I feel that it throws away the translation of the Gemara. So therefore, I try to keep it in a simpler language. Rabotai, you can do it whichever way you want, but the word Eilalav, if you use it as must be, you'll see it will be much easier to learn the Gemara than trying to figure out rather, isn't it? Okay. So let's get back into the Gemara. One more time. Eilalav must be. Shema mina, learn from here. Shu'ura de oni lichud. The measurement, the time of the oni is one. V'shur de kohen lichud. And the shur de kohen is also one, meaning they're two separate times. Shema mina, learn from over here, Rabotai, and that is the conclusion. This is what we asked initially. We asked at the beginning, if you remember, where it said Amar Mar. Right, when we had the whole thing with, I don't want to go back to the whole thing right now. So let's do it. When we said before, Amar Mar Mishasha Konim Nechzil Chol B'Trumatan Uriminhu, right? The Master said in our Mishnah, from the time when the Konim entered through the Truma, that's when you have to recite the Shema. But then the Gemara said, I'll bring you a contradiction. From when does one recite the Shema in the evening? From the time when the poor person enters to eat the bread and salt. So then we asked, the question over there was, are we going to say that the beginning of this Mishnah contradicts the beginning of our Mishnah? That's where the whole question started. And we started saying, we want to say no, and then we said yeah, and then we went back and forth. Now the conclusion is going to be that it does, Rabotai. Meaning like this, Rabotai. Let me explain it like this. What does that mean? It does. I should have said it does. 1 second. Meaning like this. When we said before, when we said Lo Ani V'Kohen Chad Shuruhu, we want to say that it doesn't argue on our Mishnah. And we wanted to prove that the Ani V'Kohen is really one at the same time. From then we had brought challenges going back and forth to coming to the answer now, telling you now that initial assumption that we made, that Ani V'Kohen is one Shu'ur, so therefore the Mishnah, so therefore the teaching over here in Daf Bet Amud Bet is not arguing on the Mishnah Daf Bet Amud Aleph. That initial assumption is going to be the wrong assumption. So we have to say that it does, from what we see now, that it does actually argue on our Mishnah. So over there it says, Seifa Vadai Pligya Matnitin. The end of this teaching for sure argued on the end of our teaching in the Mishnah. With this understanding in mind, with what we just concluded, that since only, Since Ani Shur Lichud, Vikon Shur Lichud, since each one has its own separate times, so they're not one at the same time. So if Ani Shur Lichud, Vikon Shur Lichud, so the Ani over here in this case, when he entered to eat the bread meal with salt, is not the same Shur with our Mishnah. So it comes out that even the beginning of this teaching argues on the beginning of our Mishnah. That's where the whole thing actually started. Alright, Rabotai, let's just try to do a few more lines. Okay, because let's just try to get, we're still on that sugi, let's get through this page, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay. Alright, you know what I want to do? Before I continue the next piece. You know something? Just thinking what's better. Yes. Before I continue the next piece, let's start from the word law, right? What we started today, let's go down straight without having to go back and forth. Rabotai, 1 second. I missed one Rashi for you guys. Let's just go back to that Rashi. We said before in the Gemara said, Rabbi Chanin Omer, no, second, no, not that one. I'm sorry. Rabbi Acha v'Amri Rabbi Acha Omer, Misha'asha Rob b'nei Adam nichletzim la'asev. I should have read that the Rashi. I didn't. I apologize. Let's go back to that Rashi I just saw it. Nichasim lahasev. Id Amri. Some going to learn when do the majority of the people go ahead and recline to eat their bread meal. Id Amri b'imot hachol. Some say this is going on during the weekday time. V'id Amri b'shabbatot. Some want to learn that really the majority of the people when they enter to eat, it's going on the Shabbat time. Mikol makom, nevertheless, he says you should know mi'ucharhu likulam. Rabotai, I'm not going to get into the back and forth right now. Take out the word, now take out the word. I'm just going to tell you outside like this. Nevertheless, you have to understand that whether you want to learn according to Rabbi Acha, and some say according to Rabbi Acha, when majority of the people eat, when they enter to eat their bread meal, when is that? Whether you want to learn it's during the weekday when they enter to eat, and that's when you're allowed to say Shema, or whether you want to learn that they enter to eat the bread meal on Shabbat, on Friday nights, and that's the time when you're allowed to say Shema, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because it says, Mikol makom, nevertheless, mi'ucharu likulam. These two times, Shabbat, and eating, meaning having a bread meal on Shabbat, Friday night, or having a bread meal during the weekday, you should know these times are later than all the other opinions. Right? We have here 5 opinions. I'll put it like this. We have the opinion of Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shu, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Hanania, and Rabbi Achai. And some say it was also Rabbi Acha. So, when it speaks about Rob B'nei Adam, when did they enter to eat the Rob B'nei Adam? Is it going on the regular weekday or is it going on Shabbat? He says it doesn't matter. Some want to learn it's going on the regular weekday, some want to say it's going on Shabbat. But whichever way you want to learn, he wants to say, you should know that this opinion of Rabbi Achai, or some say Rabbi Acha, this opinion is later than the other opinions. It's later than the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Hanania. Okay? That's all Rashi is telling us over here. So let's just do the Rashi one more time. For those of you that love Rashi, let's do the Rashi one more time. Nichletzim lahasev, when they enter to recline to eat their bread meal, eat the amri b'motachol. Someone will learn that they're reclining to eat their bread meal during the weekday. V'id amri b'shabbatot, and someone will learn that they're going to eat their bread meal on Friday night on Shabbat. Mikol makom, whichever way you want to learn, nevertheless, mi'ucharhu likulam. This is the later time from all the other times, like I mentioned. Okay, so now let's get back to our Gemara, and we're going to go straight down. So we began the class saying today that the shi'ur, the ani shi'ur l'chud, the kohen shi'ur l'chud, we want to say that the shi'ur of the ani and the shi'ur of the kohen, they're 2 separate times. They're not one and the same. The Gemara said, "Lo, that's where we began." No, it's not true. Ani v'kohen chashuruhu. Ani and the kohen really is one and the same time. The Gemara asked a question. The ani b'nei Adam. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let me go back. I jumped the line. Well, one more time. No. Ani v'kohen chashuruhu. Ani and the kohen really, it's one time. The ani b'nei Adam lav chashuruhu. The ani and the people that enter to eat their bread meal on Friday night, they're not one and the same time. The Gemara asked the question. Do you want to tell me that a poor person and a kohen, they have one at the same time? What do you mean? I'll bring you a contradiction. From when does one begin to recite the Shema in the evening? From the time once the day sanctifies on every Shabbat, these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shua says, Rabbi Shua says, from the time the Kohanim become tahor to be able to eat the truma. Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Meir said, from the time the Kohanim dip into the mikvah to eat their truma. Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Meir, but don't the Kohanim go to the mikvah during the day? Rabbi Chanina says, from the time when the poor person enters to eat his bread with salt. Rabbi Achai, Rabbi Achai, and some say it was Rabbi Acha, Omer, they said, Misha'asharov, meaning he said, depending on who you're going on, Misha'asharov ben Adam nichnesim lahasev. From the time when the majority of people enter to eat, to recline, and eat their bread meal. Now the Gemara asks the question, if you're going to tell me that the oni and the kohen is really one time, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yeshua, then you're going to make a problem because they're going to have Rabbi Chanina and he's agreeing with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. Like we explained, you can't have that in the same teaching. Elav must be, Shema Minah, learn from here, She'ur the oni lichud, V'she'ur the kohen lichud. The she'ur of the oni is one time and the she'ur of the kohen is another time, Shema Minah. Learn from over here. So once we know that the oni and the kohen, they're not one at the same time, you have to say what we asked the initial question when we began this whole discussion. From the previous classes, you have to go ahead and learn that the ratio of that teaching argues on the ratio of our Mishnah, because we're saying that oni shu'ur lichud, the kohen shu'ur lichud. Now the Gemara asks a question. Fine. Hey Menachem Muchar. I'm very happy. Fine. You're right. Right. Ani shur l'chud, kohen shur l'chud. Which one is the later time? Which one is the later time from both of them? If they're two separate times, which one is later? So he says, hey Menachem Muchar. Mistaber says it makes sense. The oni mi'uchar. It makes sense that the poor person's time is later. The amar, the oni mukdam, because if you're going to say that the poor person's time is earlier, you have a problem now. Rabbi Chanina, Hainu, Rabbi Eliezer. Here we go. Then you have another problem. You're going to have in the black, Rabotai, the black. Rabbi Chanina, Hainu, Rabbi Eliezer. If I'm going to tell you right now, because remember, what is the question? The question right now we're dealing with is Oni v'Kohen. Since we're saying that they both have two separate times, which of them is a later time? So we're saying that the Oni's time is later than the Kohen's time when it comes to reciting the Shema, of course. So he says, I have to say that. It makes sense to say that. Why? If I'm going to tell you that the Oni's time is earlier than the Kohen's time, then I have another problem. I'm going to conflict with this first opinion. Watch this. If Rabbi Chanina is going to tell us, if we're going to say that the Oni's time is before the Kohen's time, then comes out that Rabbi Chanina is the same opinion like Rabbi Eliezer. Why? Because, no, one second. Yes. Correct. Yes, one second, Rabbi. Yes, Rabbi Chanina's time is the same opinion like Rabbi Eliezer. Why? Because Rabbi Eliezer spoke about when the day became Shabbat, meaning on sunset. So if you're going to say that the Oni's time is earlier than the Kohen's time, so you're making the opinion of Rabbi Chanina equal to that opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer said, when do you have to recite the Shema? When Shabbat kicks in, and that's at sunset. So that meaning right when Ben Esrashot starts. So if that's the case, you're making Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Eliezer together, and we have the same question that we had with Rabbi Yeshua. Why do I need two opinions? Because they're saying one and the same thing. So now we're asking the same question on them. What do I need Rabbi Chanina and what do I need Rabbi Eliezer over here? If you're going to learn that Oni is before the Kohen. That's why he says, I am forced to learn that the Oni comes after the Kohen. Because if I'm going to say that the Oni comes before the Kohen, it's going to collide with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, because it comes out that they're saying one and the same thing. I don't need two people, two Tanaim or Amoraim. I don't need them telling me one and the same thing. Because we read that each one is giving me a different time altogether. So let's see that in the Gemara one more time. Hey, Minayhu Muchar. Which one of them is later? Mistaber to Oni Muchar. It makes logical sense that the time of the poor person is later than the time of the Kohen. Why? The Oni Mukdam. Because if you're going to tell me that the Oni is before the time of the Kohen, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Eliezer, you're going to make a problem. You're going to have conflict opinions. You're making Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Eliezer saying one and the same thing, and that cannot be. Elalav must be, Shema Mina, learn from over here, the Oni Me'uchar. So now we, not only do we know that Oni Lechud, V'Kohen Lechud, that two separate times, but which one of them is later? We see from over here that Oni has a later time than a Kohen. Shema Mina, learn over here. Rabotai, we have two periods. I should technically stop over here, but you know something? Let's continue a little bit more, because we're still in that sugya, and when we're going to turn the page, we're still in that sugya, so let's try to get this, let's get this also inside. If the time is going a lot, I apologize, Rabotai, because I don't want to go back through the whole thing. We're not in that sugya, our minds are clear. Amar, we started the Gemara, the master said, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, right? The master said, Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Meir, Ve'alo kohanim be'od yom hem tovlim. Don't the kohanim go to the mikvah? I'm sorry, one second. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Meir, Ve'alo kohanim be'od yom hem tovlim. But don't the kohanim go to the mikvah during the day? So how can you tell me that that's the time you could say Shema? So the Gemara says, Shaper ka'amar le Rabbi Yehuda le Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda said good to Rabbi Meir. How can you ever say that when is one allowed to recite the Kriya Shema in the evening? When the Kohanim enter to dip themselves into the mikvah. How? But it's still day. So the Gemara says the question that Rabbi Yehuda asked Rabbi Meir is a very good one. He said good to him. The Gemara says, Rabbi Meir hachi ka'amale. Really, you know Rabbi Meir, and what? Remember we saw in Rashi where it says Rabbi Meir is going to come and is going to answer back. So this is what Rabbi Meir really meant to tell him. When Rabbi Meir says that the Kohanim are allowed to go ahead and dip into the mikvah, and that's the time you're allowed to take Shema, this is what he really wanted to tell him. Miswarat, do you think the Ana Abenash Mashot Didaka Amina? Do you think I was going Anyo Benash Mashot? Do you think I was going Anyo Benash Mashot? Right? Because you had 9 minutes Benash Mashot, or 11 minutes depending on who you want to go like. Do you think I was going on your Benash Mashot? So when you thought when the Kohen dips over here, you still have 9 minutes until the stars come out. So that's you asking me, how can I go ahead and tell you that this is the time for Kriya Shema? That's a problem. Because still not Zman Shchiva, according to you, Zman Shchiva is over here. So one more time. Rabbi Meir said like this to him. Do you think I went according to your Benash Mashot? Ana Abenash Mashot de Rabbi Yossi Ka'amina. I was speaking about Rabbi Yossi's Benash Mashot. What's with Rabbi Yossi's Benash Mashot? What's with Rabbi Yossi's Benash Mashot? The Amar Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi said, Benash Mashot keher of Ein. According to Rabbi Yossi, his Benash Mashot, Rabbi Yossi, is like a blink of an eye. Ze nichnas v'ze yotze. This one enters, the night enters, and this one exits, the day comes out. V'i efshar la'amod alav. It's impossible for you to go ahead and determine that time. That means, Rabotai, look what Rabbi Meir is telling Rabbi Yehuda. Yes, Rabbi Yehuda, correct? Yes. Rabbi Meir is telling Rabbi Yehuda, when the guys dip over here, once they dip into the mikvah, automatic. Yeah. One second. Where is it? Where did it go? Where did you go? 1 second. Ah, man. I just had it. I know something. Over here. So you want to get a thicker marker so you guys can see it. Rabbi Meir is telling Rabbi Yehuda, 1 second. Did you think the whole time that I was going on your Benash Mashot, so you asked questions on me? No. I was going on the Benash Mashot of Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi's Benash Mashot is when? It's Keher Ein. You can't even determine that time. So when I said that the time that you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to recite this Kriya Shema, when the Kohanim dip into the mikvah, because it's a little bit before sunset. So once they already dipped right over here, once they already dipped, it's automatically night. According to Rabbi Yossi, this is considered to be at Zman Shchiva. So that's what they're allowed to go ahead and they're allowed to say Kriya Shema. That's why Rabbi Yehuda had a question. How do you allow me to say Shema over here? Oh, I have another 9 minutes. He says once they dip, right over here, once they dip, automatically that's that split second automatic, not even a second, you can't even, it's quick. Automatically, that's already night. Rabotai, let's see the words in Rashi. Let's see these words in Rashi. We missed another Rashi. Fine, I'll just read like this. Just take away the word Lukulam. He says in Ozain the Haggadah Chirim, Rashal Mochek Zeh. So he says you should erase it. Whatever. Rabotai, it's not a big, it doesn't change much. It's just a matter of context. Now, so let's just go to Vehem Minahim Mucha. We're asking before we began this case, we asked the question, which one of them is later? The Ani or the Kohen? It's very simple. Is it the poor person is later or the Kohen is later? Which time is later? So we answered the Ani is later as we explained. Now Rashi tells you over here, Hachi Garsina, this is how you have to have the text in the Gemara. Isaka died the Ani Kodim. If you're gonna think, if it's gonna go up in your mind to assume that the Ani, that the poor times is before the Kohen, I have a problem. Rabbi Chanina, I'm Rabbi Lezer. I'm going to have a problem because Rabbi Chanina is saying the same thing like Rabbi Lezer as we explained. Alright, that was the Rashi. Fine. Now, I want to show you something. Whenever you see Rashi, show you something. Whenever you see Rashi, especially when it's not bolded, if you pay attention closely, there's two lines, but it's not bolded. It's not bolded at all. Meaning there's not even a beginning to it. That means Rashi he's introducing the next topic. He's introducing what's going to be next. Just know that. So look what Rashi is giving you information that you should know before you're going to read that case of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Again, I told you outside, but let's see it inside Rashi. Ben Hashmashad Rabbi Yehuda. Again, if you see there's odd bet, it goes to the Hagod Regra. He says you have to add the word Yuter Mechatzi Mil. Same concept what we said before, but I don't want to repeat it. So we're just going to say we're going to stick with what Rashi says. Ben Hashmashad Rabbi Yehuda Mehalach Chatzi Mil Lifnei Tzitz Kochavim. Ben Hashmashad, the twilight period of according to Rabbi Yehuda, is the amount of time that it takes a person to walk a Chatzi Mil, which we explained was 9 minutes. Before the 3 stars come out, that's considered to be Ben Hashmashad. The Rabbi Yossi, but the Ben Hashmashad of Rabbi Yossi, Keherav Ein Lifnei Tzitz Kochavim. It's like a blink of an eye before the 3 stars come out. Rabbi Meir ke Rabbi Yossi Shrili. Rashi is already telling what the Gemara is going to say. Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Yossi. V'chi tavel mikam michachi, when the Kohen went in and he dipped before this time, before the time of when the stars come out. Samach l'chashech is really close to nightfall already. Samach l'chashech, that's really close to nightfall. Uzman shchiva karin, and we're going to call that time the time when people lie down. Rabotai, watch this. According to what is Rashi? Rashi is saying us like this. According to Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashmashot. According to Rabbi Yossi, his Ben Hashmashot is mamish like this. I don't know. Let's say like a little, like mamish like this. So when the Kohen goes out and dips into the mikvah, bam! Automatically it's ready. The stars came out. So really, when he's dipping into the mikvah before this time of Tzedek Kochavim, so basically, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's not Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashmashot is I don't know. I don't even know how to tell it to you. It's not even 0.001. I don't know. It's not Rabbi Yossi's Ben Hashmashot is very small. So according to Rabbi Yossi, it's sunset, and basically it's sunset, blink of an eye, and then it's when the stars came out. So when he goes before this time of when the 3 stars come out, that's close to when? That's close to Chashecha. He's really dipping right now, right before when the stars come out, because since the Ben Hashmashot period is like the blink of an eye, so he's not dipping like this, like Rabbi Yehuda thought it was, I have 9 minutes, so you're dipping before the day. If you're dipping before twilight, you're still day, and so on and so forth. You have to wait. How can you say the time? It's not time to go, it's not time to sleep yet, so how can you say Shema? No, Rabbi Yossi is going like, I'm sorry, Rabbi Meir was going like Rabbi Yossi's time. Keher of Ayin. If Ben Hashmashot is Keher of Ayin, so once they basically go before sunset, the second they dip, because they have to go a little bit before that time. Once they dip a little bit, bam, automatically it's already 3 stars come out, because that time of Keher of Ayin, the blink of an eye, that was Ben Hashmashot. So good, they could go ahead and say it. So therefore, that's why Rabbi Meir answered Rabbi Yehuda, and he said, Rabbi Yehuda, don't come with your reasoning of Ben Hashmashot being 9 minutes. That's what you have a question on me. How do you recite it? You still have to wait until the stars come out. Yeah, that's what you had a problem with understanding when I said, when they dip, because you thought it's only days still, comes Rabbi Meir and he says, I hold like Rabbi Yossi, and I don't hold like you. And what did Rabbi Yossi say? That benas mashos ke'harv ein, ze nichnas, v'ze yotzeh, v'i efshar lamod olav. That this, what do you call it? The night enters and the day comes out, and it's impossible for us to even determine that time of benas mashot. So when a Kohen basically dips himself into the mikvah, automatically that is the time when it's actually the 3 stars come out, and that's when you're allowed to go ahead and say the Shema, and that's considered to be Zman Shchiva of for Ubishabacham. Rabotai, before we do conclude, I do have this custom, so if you Rabotai, before we do conclude, we gotta turn the page. We'll do Daf Gimel Bli Neder. That's it. There will be no more parts for this. Remember, when I do the parts for one Daf, when we do the Daf, we say the parts. Once we finish with the Daf, we're gonna start Daf Gimel. We're gonna start with new parts. All right, Rabbi, so just 1 second. I'm gonna take my phone from airplane mode. If you hear anything coming in, don't worry about it. Let me just get. Let me see something. You see, I knew it. Okay. Yes, I know. 1 second. Ay. Okay. Rabbi said, let's do this. Here we go. Let's do this. I had to turn this on. Alright, Rabbi said. Rabotai, so the custom is what I have is like this. Rabotai, turn the page, kiss the page, love the page, be with the page, sleep with the page. Rabotai, everything's about the page. Again, you have to be happy you finished a daf. I want to show you something. Somebody actually gave me this in my class. Yaakov Yisrael, Yunayev. He actually gave me this as a birthday gift. 1 second, Rabotai. So, Rabotai, watch this. So they put it actually over here, turn the page. Rabotai, we have to be excited for the accomplishment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the opportunity to be finished, to be able not only finish Shas with Rashi, B'ezrat Hashem and Tosot and the Rishonim Bli Neder. B'ezrat Hashem, Rabotai, have a great day. Enjoy. Chazer, Rabotai, review. Have a great day, boys.